Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahavidyan karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chaitanyam Sarvadam Sarvam Sarvabhutaguhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Oh, very nice. Welcome to all of you, and welcome also to the students attending this class online. We continue with this chapter 18. I'm pleasantly surprised with, even though I've studied it before, as we go through it in these classes. Its brilliance just seems to jump out. Let me introduce a series of verses we'll see today. It's a series of verses. Shankara uses the word I, aham. So with regard to the pronoun I, if Shankara lived today, he would definitely talk about a problem in the teachings of Neo-Vedanta with regard to this pronoun I. And since it is such a widespread problem, let me talk about it first, and then we'll see Shankara's teachings here. Neo-Vedanta has a very, by the way, if you don't know, Neo-Vedanta is a version of Advaita Vedanta with most of the methodology removed. It's you could think of it as like a shortcut Vedanta. I think that would be a fair way of characterizing it. It minimizes the importance of spiritual practice, which is interesting in and of itself. And it puts, what did they say, all your eggs in one basket? And that basket is, who am I, the inquiry. That inquiry is pretty much 90% of what is called Neo-Vedanta today. And the problem goes like this. Who am I? Well, the sense of I-ness is just a thought, and a thought is not you, so there is no I, and the real you, which is consciousness, is already enlightened. In those few statements, that pretty much is the sum total of the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, which is why I called it shortcut Vedanta. And it turns out that for the vast majority of people, it's not going to work at all, because first of all, there's no spiritual practice to prepare you for these profound teachings. And secondly, they've stripped out all the incredible methodology, the step-by-step leading you to a discovery part in the traditional teachings of Advaita Vedanta. So the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is these verses are not about Neo-Vedanta, which it's interesting. In Shankara's time, no one had come up with this particular thing. It's very much a modern creation. And modern creation because, shortcut, what do we know about modern culture? Everything has to be very fast, very convenient, including enlightenment. This is modern times. So this is the origin of this Neo-Vedanta. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is not because Shankara has it in mind. He doesn't. But rather, Shankara's teachings are focused on I, and that's where the problem is in Neo-Vedanta. They just dismiss it out of hand. I is an illusion. The world is an illusion. Everything is an illusion. You're already enlightened. So it's that dismissal of I that's a problem. And Shankara is going to go into it in quite a bit of detail here. So why don't we see that first? Let's see this one, right? Yeah, okay. Good. Let's see this. Adarshas-tu yadabhaso, adarshas-tu tarabhaso, mukakara saheva saha, mukakara saheva saha, yathaivam pratyayadarsho, yathaivam pratyayadarsho, yadabhasastadahyaham, yadabhasastadahyaham. So we're still, Shankara continues to use this pratibimba-vada to great effect. His very skillful use of that metaphor. Yadabhasaha, the abhasa, the appearance, and in this case it's the appearance of your face, adarshaha too, the appearance of your face in the mirror, is mukha akaraha, is in the form of your face. This is the basic metaphor we've seen again and again. Just as your face is reflected by a mirror, the metaphor is very simple. Just as your face is reflected by the mirror, but the face in the mirror is not this face. This face is real. This face is not. So that becomes a metaphor for consciousness reflected in your mind. Consciousness is you. That's the reality. The consciousness reflected in your mind is what we commonly call experience. And this is where people go off. They use this term chit-abhasa without understanding what it is. It simply means experience. Do you exist in your experience? Yeah. That's chit-abhasa. Your feeling that you exist in this experience, that is chit-abhasa. But the point that Shankara makes using this metaphor is just as the face in the mirror is not the real one. In the same way, the sense of existence present in your experience right now is not the real one. And I have to explain that. I'll say that again. The sense of, let me add some details. The sense of being an individual conscious being that's present in your experience right now is not the truth of who you are. It's a reflection of who you are. Why? Who you truly are is unborn, uncreated, limitless, boundaryless consciousness that's untouched by any worldly activity. Is the I that's present, is you, the conscious being present in your experience, is that one, in terms of your experience, is that one unborn, uncreated, limitless, untouched by sadness? Not the I present in your experience. So that's the reflected consciousness, which is not the real you. And here we have to discern between the real you and the unreal you, like discerning between the real face and the reflected face. And here's where the pronoun I comes in. Now, before we come to I, let's finish Shankara's point here. Saha eva saha. So when you're looking in the mirror, you look in the mirror and you say, "Yup, that's me all right." If you want to say that in Sanskrit, you say, Saha eva saha. That's exactly the sense of it. That's me. Is it really me? It's not really me. It's a reflection. Okay. So this I just introduced the problem of the Hankara. So that is me. Look at the problem with pronouns. And pardon me for using a little grammar, but it happens to be important here. Since we're dealing with I, which is a pronoun, Shankara here uses a third-person pronoun, saha eva saha. That is that. That's literally what it means, that is that. But the sense is that is that. That which is me is that which is in the mirror. That's a sense. Notice the repetition of the word that in that case. So the word that refers to two different things. The pronoun that. Pronouns can refer to any number of things, but it becomes confusing. Were you ever writing and like writing a story and you've got a lot of pronouns going on and suddenly you realize that your pronouns aren't connecting properly as you're writing that story? That's a real common thing that happens. Typically, if you're writing like a dialogue or something, then he said to him. That's a common problem. These pronouns get recycled, so to speak. They get used again and again. That's a problem with the pronoun I. Because just as the face which appears in the mirror is called me, the face hanging on the front of my face, on the front of my head is also called me. So you have that pronoun me now used for two different things. Confusion, right? In this case, the pronoun I that's used for the sense of being an individual person right now in this experience, yes, that means ahankara, that sense of I is called I. When you say, I came here for class, that I. The I who is sitting you say, I am sitting in a chair. That I. But now we've got another I. I made a bad joke in the, prior class. Of course, there's another I. The other I is pure consciousness. So you got this confusion between the I who's sitting in your chair and the I who is sitting in the I, which is true consciousness. The bad joke, I think I made it in the last class. So you have two I's. More confusion. You add confusion onto confusion by doing that. Okay, you get the point. So, in the first half, we have the drishtanta, the metaphor, using pratibhimbavada. Second half is the darshtanta, what the metaphor represents. He says, yata evam, in this way. Yat in the last line, yat abhasaha, the reflection of consciousness, which is pratyaya adarshaha, which appears in the adarsha in the mirror, composed of pratyaya, thoughts, the thought mirror, mind. Nice. So the consciousness which appears in your mind, tada, is that in that case, then he, indeed, it is called aham, I. So the I that appears in your mind is I number one. Actually, let's call that I number, yes, watch. Let's call that I sub 0. I sub 1 is the I that appears in your mirror, in the mind, sorry. What about the I that is your true self, which Vedanta leads us to understand is just pure unconditioned consciousness, not reflected, just consciousness, pure consciousness, whether the mind is present or not, that consciousness. That's also called I, but now we can call that, and I think I heard someone say this, I sub 0. The root I, the fundamental I. We've got two. They're both called I. And that's a source of considerable confusion. And that's a kind of confusion that Shankara is going to address. Shankara is going to address that. But it's a kind of confusion that's very conveniently sidestepped by Neo-Vedanta. When they say I is an illusion. Which I? Because in deep meditation, when my mind is perfectly silent, I am there. Is that an illusion? According to Neo-Vedanta, because they fail to discern this confusion between the two I's. Now, what is the solution to the problem? And Shankara doesn't do this, but allow me to. And we've done this before anyway. What is the solution? If you have two eyes, get rid of one of them. That's probably, in both cases, it's undesirable. So, the fact that a sense of being an individual person arises in your mind, ahankara, is that natural or unnatural? Completely natural. And as we've discussed at length, not only is it natural, but it's beneficial, it's necessary. It's an organizational principle in your mind. If you didn't have a hub, a focal point in your mind, something that says I am this, I am that, a reference for that word I, if you didn't have that I in the mind, your mind couldn't function. You need that I. It makes your mind work properly. It's natural. Then this is a misinterpretation, not of the Neo-Vedantins, but of others, especially in this Yoga Vasishta tradition. If any of you have been exposed to that, Yoga Vasishta is based on Advaita Vedanta, but it's not Advaita Vedanta at all. Lots of differences in its teachings, which is why we have never, people sometimes ask Swamiji, why don't you teach Yoga Vasishta? The answer is, it's a lovely text, wonderful text, but it's not Advaita Vedanta, and it would cause massive confusion to teach it. So the approach in Yoga Vasishta, they call it Mano Nasha, or Ahankara Nasha. And that is, that ego that appears in your mind is the source of all your troubles. Which is correct, right? Because when the I that appears in your mind is gone, do you have any suffering? And just to be very concrete there, in deep sleep, that I that arises in your mind, that sense of being an individual being, goes away. How did you sleep last night? Blissfully. Maybe your dreams weren't so blissful, because ahankara creeps back during dreams, but dreamless sleep is blissful for all people. And then the other example we've used many times is a moment of absorption. In a moment like in meditation, when that I-ness goes away in meditation, how do you feel in meditation? Any problems? In fact, you may have a dozen problems. You have a to-do list with all these huge problems. Suppose your accountant has just told you have to file for bankruptcy. And then you meditate. Of course, it might be a little hard to meditate then, but suppose you're a skillful meditator and you get all of this financial stuff out of your mind and you gain that state of absorption. Ahankara goes away. How do you feel about your bankruptcy? You don't feel anything about your bankruptcy because the one who feels the problem of bankruptcy is absent, right? That sense of individuality. Who says, I am bankrupt? not consciousness. That individual I. So, the approach of Yoga Vasishta is get rid of that fellow. Not, it's like getting rid of one of these eyes. It's undesirable. As we just said, it is an organizational principle. It is natural. We don't have to get rid of it. What is Advaita Vedanta's approach is to understand it. And it's so simple. I guess anything is simple if you really get it. So anyway, I don't want to, let me just drop it. When you look in the mirror, a child looks in the mirror, a 1-year-old looks in the mirror. By the way, many animals can recognize themselves in the mirror. Not all animals by any means. Certain animals, it's interesting, certain animals can and certain animals can't recognize their appearance in the mirror. You can look it up. It's interesting to find. You'll be surprised which ones can and which ones can't. Anyway, look it up. So a child or say, let's use a child since we don't really know how animals look and see. So a child sees himself or herself in the mirror and says, I'm there. There I am. Not appreciate a 1-year-old. Of course, a 1-year-old probably won't say, there I am, but that's the experience, right? The 1-year-old, I presume, can't distinguish between the child in the mirror and the child here. So there I am, failing to distinguish the two. When you look in the mirror, you don't have that problem. You know that the mirror is a reflection of you. You are an enlightened mirror user. How's that? You know it's only a reflection. An unenlightened person can't distinguish between that sense of I-ness that arises in the mind and the true I, which is pure consciousness. Just like the child's, there I am, for the unenlightened person, that sense of I-ness is me. What about the enlightened person? So we talked about the enlightened mirror user. Now we're talking about the enlightened user of a mind. An enlightened person's relationship with the mind. The enlightened person recognizes the presence of that sense of individuality that arises in the mind, the I-ness, the feeling of I-ness in the mind. The enlightened person says, yep, there it is again. And it's not me. It's a reflection of me. What is the difference in experience of an enlightened person's experience of the sense of I-ness and an unenlightened person's experience of the sense of I-ness? This is a very sophisticated question. I don't think I've ever asked it before in a class. So take a moment. Assuming you're not enlightened yet, you experience I-ness right now. I also experience I-ness right now. Is there any difference? Actually, based on this discussion, you probably get it the same way I get it right now. And that is the sense of I-ness present in your mind right now is not who you truly are. It's a mental event. We call it ahankara. It's a reflection of you. It's not truly you. So, this is what it means. Notice we don't have to get rid of it. We have to understand it. We have to, that's it. We have to understand that sense of I-ness that's present in our experience right now is a reflection of the true I. Therefore, to go back to that question, what is the difference of experience between an enlightened person and an unenlightened person? They both feel the same sense of I-ness. There's no difference in experience. There's a huge difference in their conclusion about that experience. They both feel the sense of I-ness identically, but they both interpret that experience in very different ways. Next. Yat yevam pratipatti syat, yat yevam pratipatti syat, sarasmiti chananyata, sarasmiti chananyata, tattvam ityupadeshopi, tattvam ityupadeshopi, dvara bhavaranartakaha, dvara bhavaranartakaha. Iti evam, thus in this way, pratipattihi syat, you can gain this understanding. Pratipatti is a fancy Vedantic word for understanding. You can gain recognition, I use here. So you can gain this recognition. And what is the recognition? Sat asmi iti. Sat asmi, Brahma asmi iti, I am that. And notice what Shankara is pointing out here is that this term asmi, this term asmi that comes in the Mahavakya, the pronoun I, a little tricky. Let me not go there. Take this Mahavakya, either tat tvamasi or better yet, sat asmi. Sat is Brahman. So sat asmi means I am Brahman. And notice, I'm screwing up my face, wondering, how does a Neo-Advaitin interpret these Mahavakyas since they dismiss I? I suppose, yeah, they can put their own spin on it, I'm sure, right? So but a little tricky. Look at the problem. If you really want to challenge a Neo-Vedantin, by the way, I don't recommend arguments with anyone, because usually people are emotionally committed to their particular spiritual path. So if you happen to know someone who is an ardent follower of this Neo-Vedanta and you get into an argument, I don't think it's going to be satisfying for either of you unless you happen to be unusually mature in your style of argument. Usually it doesn't work because everyone has an emotional commitment to what they've been taught, including you and me. Yeah? Recognize it. And don't let it fool you. Okay, that's not our topic here. But if you ask that Neo-Vedantin, what does I am Brahman mean? Aham Brahmasmi. And you challenge that Neo-Vedantin by saying, you dismiss Aham. You say I is an illusion. When you say, who am I, you claim to follow the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, doing this, who am I, what is the Tamil? Nan-yar, who am I? I don't know any more Tamil than that. That's it. So who am I? And they claim to follow Ramana Maharshi, and they claim it works like this: who am I? I don't find any I, therefore there's no I. That's not exactly what Ramana taught, but that's how they interpret it. So upon inquiry, you chase after I and it disappears. This is generally how they explain it. It's not how Ramana explained it. You chase after this I disappears. Therefore, I as an illusion. So you ask this Neo-Vedanta, and then what does Aham Brahmasmi mean? If I is an illusion, the illusional I is Brahman? You see the problem of that doctrine. It renders the Mahavakyas useless, which is the topic of the next verse. So let me not go further on it. So what Shankara is saying here, it's crucial to maintain both of these I's, the reflection I and the true I. It's important to maintain them both, to understand the difference, and continuing our verse, cha, and also na anyata, otherwise. Suppose you follow this Neo-Vedanta, you dismiss that. If you dismiss the pronoun I, then what is the consequence? Then, tattvam iti, the Mahavakya, tattvam-asi, using another pronoun, the second person pronoun, you, but it's the same. The pronoun that refers to the person. The pronouns I and you refer to a person. The third person pronoun does not, but both the first and second person pronouns. By the way, for any traditional Sanskrit students in the room or online, usually Sanskrit grammar turns it around. What we call first person, they call third. What we call first. So if you're a traditional grammar student, we're using the Western convention here. First person, I, we, etc. So, anyata, otherwise, if you dismiss this pronoun I as an illusion, what is the consequence? And tattvam iti upadesha api, the upadesha, the teaching, the Mahavakyas, like tattvam asi, Mahavakyas like aham brahmasmi. What about these Mahavakyas? He says, the last word, anartakaha, it becomes meaningless. Mahavakyas become meaningless if you get rid of these pronouns. Why? Dwara abhavat. Because of the abhava, because of the absence. Dwara here is not a funny choice of word. It's a sophisticated choice of word, but it's not very clear. Dwara means doorway, as many of you know, but you can't translate it like that here. So better to say it's the locus. I've used the word medium here, which is fine. So if you dismiss the pronoun, then to whom does the Mahavakya refer? And further, we say that the Mahavakyas are the essence of Vedanta. In fact, scholars will say Vedanta is tattvam-asi. Everything else helps you get it. But everything else is not Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is tattvam-asi. Only that. And someone who's very orthodox will take that position. So look at the problem. If you dismiss the pronoun, then these Mahavakyas become meaningless because there's no pronoun. And this, we'll point this out right here. I hadn't planned on it, but it fits in. This is why Vedanta is not a philosophy. In a philosophy, why does everything exist? Why does nothing not exist? And into these very philosophical inquiries into absolute reality. Do you need to use the pronouns I and you in a philosophical pursuit of absolute truth? That's an interesting question. If you are engaged in a philosophical pursuit of absolute truth, you can do so without using these pronouns I and you. because you're dealing with absolute reality, and absolute reality to a philosopher is neither a I or a you. Absolute reality is a it to a philosopher. And that's why Vedanta is not philosophy. Vedanta is meaningless without the pronouns I and you, because, as you've heard me say many times, Vedanta is a solution to the problem of suffering. It's not a philosophy. Who suffers? It does not suffer. You suffer. Someone who says I suffers. So Vedanta addresses a problem whose locus, and Shankara uses this word dwara. Dwara, locus. The locus of the problem is the pronoun I or you. The locus of the problem is the person. If we dismiss the pronoun, Vedanta doesn't work. Okay, let's do one more verse. Excuse me just a moment. Shrotu syarupadesha ch18. Shrotu syarupadesha ch18. Artavatvam tata bhavet. Artavatvam tata bhavet. Adhyakshasya cha adhyakshasya na chedishtam. Adhyakshasya na chedishtam. Shrotritvam kasya tad bhavet. Shrotrastvam. Ch18. I was looking for ch18. It's not ch18. Ch18. Okay, start at the beginning. Shrotuhu, shrotra, or shrota, means listener, the one who hears. Who's listening right now? You say, I am. That's the one we're talking about. And who is that I who's listening? Is it I sub 0 or I sub 1? Sub 1. That's right. Consciousness has no ears. What to do? Okay, so I sub 1 is listening. So, shrotuhu syat, for the, and that shrotuhu is a genitive case, for the hearer, for the listener, upadesha is this teaching. Upadesha, not just any, upadesha means teaching, but contextually not just any teaching, but maha upadesha, the Mahavakyas. So the Mahavakya is shrotuhu syat. It's meant for the listener. Who is the listener? I sub 1. And chet, if this teaching is meant for the listener, then artavatvam tata bhavet. Then tata, in that manner, artavatvam bhavet, it becomes useful, it becomes meaningful. If there is a Mahavakya, which includes a pronoun, and if there is a listener, which includes a pronoun, meaningful. But suppose, na ch18. But in the third line, na ch18. But suppose this is not acceptable. This is not accepted by you. What is not accepted by you? Adhyakshasya. Again, locus. It's that listener. Adhyaksha is the main thing in this case. So it refers to the listener. It's just a fancy. Shankara's language is a little fancy here. It just means the listener. Literally, it means the main thing. Listener. So, adhyakshasya ch18, but if you don't accept the listener, what do our Neo-Vedantin friends do? They don't accept I. Why don't they accept I? He says, when you go on asking, who am I, who am I, who am I, it disappears. Oh, pardon me, I have to apologize for this joke in advance, especially to any Neo-Vedantins who are watching this, because why does I go away when you go on inquiring, who am I, who am I, who am I? Why does it disappear? Who am I, who am I, who am I? That's why the I disappears. Bad joke. Anyway, they would certainly disagree with that. But anyway, just to have some fun. So, where am I here? I distracted myself very nicely. So, if you deny the existence of I, ch18, if you reject the existence of that I number, I sub 1, then what? Kasya shrotratvam tadbhavet. Then kasya, who for whom shrotratvam bhavet. Doesn't work in English. In English, simply, then who listens? If you dismiss the pronoun I, then who will listen to the Mahavakya? Who will listen to Vedanta? Who will listen to instructions like, before these teachings become effective, you have to be a prepared student. You require some prayer, some form of bhakti. You require meditation. Your bhakti shouldn't be confined only to the temple, therefore you require karma yoga, bhakti in day-to-day life. You have to hear that. But if you're told there's no one to hear, you're already enlightened. This is Neo-Vedanta. You're already enlightened. Why practice bhakti? Why practice karma yoga? Why practice meditation? Seriously, why practice meditation? And they get one part right. This is the tricky part about Neo-Vedanta. As I said, it's based on traditional Advaita Vedanta minus the methodology. In traditional Advaita Vedanta, as you've heard me say many times, meditation won't make you enlightened. Bhakti won't make you enlightened. Karma yoga won't make you enlightened. But they're all necessary to prepare you for enlightenment. But in and of themselves, individually, they can't make you enlightened. And that part the Neo-Vedantins get. So the Neo-Vedanta says, meditation won't make you enlightened, so don't practice it. Bhakti won't make you enlightened, so don't practice it. Karma yoga won't make you enlightened, so why waste your time? They may not use that language, but that's the essence of it. And they can say that because they've skipped all the steps. I said shortcut Vedanta. What are the steps? In order for the Mahavakya to work, in order for the Mahavakya to be meaningful, you have to be ready. You have to be able to understand the deeper meaning. What is tat? What is tvam? How can tat be tvam? That's what all the teachings lead you to understand. And before you can understand all these teachings, you need a calm mind. You need a prayerful mind. You need a prepared mind. So you can see, skip all the steps and just I is false, therefore consciousness is... And here again, they get something right. They say consciousness... When they say you are already enlightened, are they referring to I sub 1 or I sub 0? Right? Sub 0. The I that is already enlightened is consciousness. They get that right. Absolutely right. But who needs Vedanta? Who needs enlightenment? So they say the I sub 0 is already enlightened, but who needs enlightenment is the one who suffers. Who suffers? I sub 1. I suffer. You suffer. So again, you see the problem, turning it into an abstract philosophy. From a philosophical standpoint, their statement is correct. The truth of who you are is already enlightened. It's absolutely a true statement. Correct. What's more important? For a teaching to be correct or for a teaching to be helpful? Isn't that an interesting observation? You can be correct without being helpful. I'll give you we need a kind of a more worldly example of that. Suppose you're in a high school physics class and you're studying motion and you want to measure the force of gravity and find out the gravitational constant. And suppose your teacher introduces Einstein's general theory of relativity, which describes gravity in terms of the warping of time-space. That's how Einstein measures gravity. And he uses these complex mathematics, I think they're called tensors, to measure the amount of warpage of time-space. So your high school physics teacher is explaining to you that the rate at which the ball falls depends on how much time-space is warped in this vicinity, and then gives you Einstein's general, it's actually an equation, I have no idea, I can't understand, by the way. I can use these fancy words, I don't understand any of it. I understand time-space warpage, but the mathematics that Einstein used is something amazing. By the way, this is a good example of something that's true but not useful. I'll give you another example. So what I'm saying here is that Einstein's, if your high school science teacher uses Einstein's complicated theory of relativity to explain motion, is it true or not? Is it helpful? I'm going to give you, and I think we'll end our class. I don't want to go on to the next verse because it begins a new topic. So we'll end the class with another silly example of something that's true but not useful. What is true but not useful? The mathematics that Einstein used was invented by someone else. True! Absolutely true. Einstein himself didn't understand the mathematics. Einstein understood the idea. He didn't have the math to express it. He had to get somebody's help. I think that's the actual story. He had to get somebody else's help to understand and express the mathematics that expresses his fancy general theory of relativity. That's another good example of true but useless. And I guess the point I'm making is this, and this is really, really important. The value of the teachings of Vedanta is not in the truth that it expresses. The value of the teachings of Vedanta is in the methodology it uses to lead you to that truth. I'll say that one more time. The value of these Vedantic teachings is not the truth that it expresses. It does express truth, no doubt. Tattvamasi. True. True, but not helpful if you ignore the methodology. The method of Vedanta is like a series of stepping stones that leads you, and the methodology is brilliant. It leads you through this sequence of realization, sequence of recognition, sequence in which you approach that truth step by step by step. That is the brilliance of Vedanta. And as far as I can tell, that is unmatched. That methodology is not found anywhere else. I've looked, and to the extent that I've looked, I've not found that methodology anywhere outside of this tradition of Advaita Vedanta. Good. This is a good place to conclude for today. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha sarve santu niramayaha sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om tat sat.